So I was actually just going to address that arguments are not evidence. This is argument, right? You've heard all the evidence that you need to hear. At some point in time, you're going to decide this case based on what you heard in court. But I wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for giving us your time. It's been 2 weeks, over 2 weeks. All of you have listened diligently. You've given your time. You've given obviously your lives outside of this court are more important. But this is a very important civic duty, and it does not go unrecognized. So we thank you very much. As the court indicated, this is my first of 2 opportunities to talk to you about this case. And in this case, there have been many witnesses who've testified. This happened 3 years ago. They provided different perspectives on what they saw, what they heard, what they did. And the majority of the witnesses were teenagers when this happened. It was a horrific event, but the main story is the same. The main story is the same. The horrific event that was etched in their minds was the same. This case is not about who did it, what happened, how it happened, when it happened, what happened. This case is about Raul Valley, the defendant, who brought a knife to 43 Laurel Glen on May 14th of 2022 and provoked a fight and stabbed 4 kids 9 times, killing 1. That's what this case is about. So what happened on May 14th of 2022? You heard testimony about this party at Lazy Brook, where it was a St. Joe's party. Kids were hanging out. They were drinking. Typical high school party. Probably not the first time there's been alcohol at a high school party, right? Not that anybody's condoning it, but it happens. So there's this party. The defendant's there with his friends. He's wearing this helmet. And in come in some Shelton High School kids, Ryan Hines and Griffin Marcinzik. And because this is a St. Joe's party, not a Shelton party, they can't come in. So the defendant and Mr. Snyder and De Silva take it upon themselves to kick them out. They steal the beer from Ryan Hines. At some point in time, it gets heated. They're arguing back and forth. And at some point, it ends out into the driveway. And when it's out into the driveway, there's this agreement. I'll fight you for my beer. So Jack and Ryan square up. And just as they're squaring up, who starts the fight? The defendant starts the fight. He sucker punches him in the back of the head. And then after he sucker punches him in the back of the head and the fight goes to the ground, he takes his helmet and uses it as a weapon and slams it into Ryan's head. You heard the defendant testify. He would have you believe that that was a push, that he pushed Ryan Hines and that he didn't hit him with the helmet. I would submit to you that if you watch that fight, you could judge for yourselves what you see in the fight. By the way, while I'm talking about witnesses, the judge is going to give you a credibility instruction, right? You're all going to have to assess the credibility of each and every witness who testified. If you recall during voir dire, I think I asked each and every one of you the same question. Do you think it's possible that somebody could get on the stand, raise their right hand, and tell the truth? And you all said yes. I also asked all of you, do you think it's entirely possible that somebody could swear to tell the truth, believe they're telling the truth, and simply be mistaken about something? And you all said, yeah, that's possible. But I also asked you, do you think it's possible somebody could get on that stand, swear to tell the truth, and look all of you in the eye and outright lie to you? So again, when you're assessing the credibility of each and every one of the witnesses who testified, that's what you have to go through. And you have to go through what they said and how does it line up with the rest of the case, right? The defendant who took the stand is also subject to that same credibility. He put his credibility in issue as soon as he took that oath. The video I would submit to you tells a very different story than what the defendant testified to a couple of days ago. So after this fight, they get in Jack's car and they leave Lazy Brook and they go to Trumbull High School. And at some point in time, as they go to Trumbull High School, there's this basketball group chat. You heard testimony that Shelton kids were in it. You heard testimony that Ryan Hines was in it. You heard testimony that the defendant was in it. You heard the testimony that De Silva and Snyder were in it. And you also heard testimony that they wanted to fight the Shelton kids at Trumbull High School. They were there for about 20 minutes. This wasn't over. Of course, there was argument and heated emotions about what had just happened at Lazy Brook. But now they want to meet up at Trumbull High School. So what does the defendant say? The defendant tells them to slide on over to Trumbull High School multiple times in the group chat. Slide right over because they want to fight. Shelton kids don't want to go to Trumbull High School. Somebody puts an address, 43 Laurel Glen, in the group chat. Come to Laurel Glen. So they go over to Laurel Glen. The defendant would have you believe that he had no idea that they were going to fight, that they were just going to another party. I would submit to you that you need to assess whether or not that's credible during your deliberations. But in any event, You heard testimony from several witnesses that the defendant wanted to go to Lazy Brook or Laurel Glen to fight. He wanted to fight at Trumbull High School, and he wanted to fight over at Laurel Glen, and that's why they were going. And as a matter of fact, when they got to Laurel Glen, the defendant lets all the kids know that they're there. There's a few kids outside, more kids come outside, and at some point in time, Tyler Rich and his friends are outside. They're around the car in front of his house at 43 Laurel Glen, and there's some testimony that at first it was peaceful, some testimony that it got heated, arguing back and forth, things were being thrown. You heard testimony from Aiden King. I saw Raul sitting behind Jack Snyder, who was driving. Tyler DeSilva was in the front seat. The defendant even said Aiden King's his boy. And Aiden King got up here and said, at some point in time, the defendant said, "Get your friends away from my car. I'm going to break a bottle over somebody's head." Again, all of these things going to what was his intent then. So things are thrown at the car. The car was being shook by the Shelton kids. There's some testimony that things were being thrown back. Car takes off, drives up and down the street. Things are thrown from the car, things from being thrown at the car. At some point in time, they end up at the end of the street, close to the intersection of Farmhouse Road near 36 Laurel Glen. This is 11:40 at night. You heard testimony. This is Jack Snyder's car. The defendant's already out of the car. Tyler DeSilva gets out of the car. I would submit to you that the defendant being mad, angry about what had just happened, Jack Snyder's car, happens just prior to this video starting. And that's the point when he asks him for the knife. He asked him for the knife. He said, "Jack, give me the knife. Where's that knife? Give me the knife." He gets out of the car. Tyler still gets out of the car. Keenan, Dimitri, Will, Mackenzie walking away, everybody with an earshot of that conversation. You heard people testify about what they heard about the knife. How you heard Keenan Frasick, he was going insane. He was pissed off about what had just happened to the car. You heard Dimitri, he was angry about what had happened to the car. Tyler DeSilva, Jack Snyder. You heard Mackenzie say, "I heard somebody asking about a knife, but I don't know exactly who it was because she's walking away," right? So we know the knife comes out at that point in time. He's angry. He arms himself with a knife at that point. But then the Shelton kids come down the street after having just told them, "Get out of here, get the heck out of here." Now look, was it right that things were thrown at the car? No, it was not right. Wasn't right that people were hitting the car, shaking the car, and people throwing things from the car at the kids or at the cars parked on the side street. That wasn't right either. But at that point in time, nobody called the police. They drove down the street. Could have called the police at that point. Could have said, "Hey, someone just damaged my car. I want them arrested for criminal mischief." They didn't do that. The defendant at that point in time thought it was very important to arm himself with a 3-inch bladed knife at that point. So the kids come down the street. Tyler Rich, Charlie Connery, Ty Wood, Ricky Fiola, a few other kids go down the street. And yeah, there's things thrown at the car. They throw things back, right? But there's no physical altercation between the parties down the street. Because if there was going to be a physical altercation initiated by the Shelton kids, it would have happened right then and there, but it didn't, right? Again, Tyler Rich running down the street. Get out of here. You guys got to get out of here. Now, you heard some testimony that somebody threw this can of WD-40 or PB Blaster back at Tyler Rich, and he's walking away. And at some point in time, he sees the defendant, and the defendant's walking towards him. So he sprays him to get him away. Ricky Fiola sees this. He's within a short distance to see this happening. At some point in time, Ricky Fiola approaches the defendant and has a conversation. And what did you hear him testify to? He said, "Listen, hey, man, it's really messed up what he did. He shouldn't have sprayed you with that stuff. But look, there's a lot of us, and there's only like 5 of you. You guys should probably just get out of here." And while he's having that conversation, what does Ricky Fiola say? Ricky Fiola sees the defendant holding a knife in his hand. Ricky Fiola turns around, walks back. The rest of the Shelton kids walk back to Tyler Rich's house. Again, no physical altercation down the road. Mackenzie Traficante is calling her sister, "I need a ride home." At some point in time, Will, Dimitri, and Keenan get out of the car, and they don't want to be a part of anything. They want to ride home. They stay down the end of the street. Rides are being called. Will calls his girlfriend, "Come pick me up." I think you heard testimony from Mackenzie Traficante who said, "No, Lito, just stay down here. Stay with me. Come home with me." That's not what he wanted to do, because Ryan Hines, who had just sucker punched in the head earlier that night and helmeted back at Lazy Brook, who was now at this party, now he wanted to go back and face those kids. But he wasn't going back just him. He was going back with a knife. Because who else goes back to a house, right? I mean, you heard testimony when he was in the car with a bunch of other people and the car was being shook and rocked and thrown at, that he was panicked, he was frightened, he was scared, he was terrified. If you're all those things, why are we not staying down the road? Why are we not waiting for Mackenzie's sisters to come pick us up? Why are we not calling somebody to come pick us up? Because he wasn't scared, terrified, panicked. It's simply not. That's not the case. He was mad. He was pissed. He was angry, and he had a knife. So they wanted to go back and go and confront those kids. Now, there's some testimony that Tyler wanted to go talk about the damage, and he knows Tyler Rich. Maybe he could work something out. But the bottom line is he's the one that was going ballistic about the car. Yeah, sure. Tyler and Snyder were angry, but he's going crazy. And he's the one that arms himself with the knife. So he gets back in that car. He makes the willful decision, right, to get back in that car, armed with a knife, and go back to the very house he was told to leave. We would have you believe he was panicked, scared, frightened, all of those things. So Jack pulls up to the 43 Laurel Glen. The defendant and Mr. De Silva get out. You've heard testimony from several witnesses that Tyler's on the left, the defendant's on the right. They move on to property. They were told to leave, so now they're trespassing. Some kids were outside. Got a little bigger when people heard, oh, people are here. You heard Tyler Rich say, I told him to get them out of my property. The defendant walks up. Ryan Hines, Faison Teal, Tommy Connery somewhere behind them, but closer in proximity to the defendant. Ty Wood there is also there. And you heard Tyler Rich say, I was yelling at these kids, get the hell off my property. I looked out the corner of my eye and I saw Raul cock his arm like he was going to punch Ty Wood. And that's when I just hauled off and cracked him in the face. And it was on. So I would submit to you, if the defendant walked on the property, confronted those kids, and started to throw a punch or pretend like he was going to throw a punch, he was the initial aggressor in the altercation by coming back, by approaching those kids, and by cocking his arm. He was the initial aggressor. He provoked the fight and started the fight. He gets hit. It's on. All right, now I can claim self-defense. Now I can take this knife out that I have in my pocket while I'm on the ground, open it up, right? All intentional conduct, and start stabbing kids, right? You heard him testify. I was flailing my arms. I would submit to you, if you look at any of the injuries on these kids from 3 years ago, those are deliberate stab wounds. Those are not flailing slash marks, stab wounds. So he stabs Ryan Hines 3 times. He stabs Faison Teal in the arm. Again, upper, right? Left arm here, Hines up in the chest as he's working his way down. And Tommy Connery, you heard testimony from Tommy Connery, who comes over and he's trying to push him away. And he's on the ground. The defendant's on the ground. He comes right after him and starts stabbing him in the leg 4 times. Deliberate. Again, what was his intent? This wasn't self-defense. He went into that fight already armed. His response to this fight was unreasonable when you look at it in totality. It was a fist fight that escalated by his doing because he was the only one there with a weapon. At some point in time, the defendant goes back to the car that's waiting for him. He would have you believe he was chased. I would suggest to you that the video shows a different story. But nevertheless, he's back at the car, looks back, and wants to run back in. He purposefully runs back in with the knife. And you hear Charlie Connery yelling, he's got a knife, he's got a knife, he's got a knife. And there's another person there yelling, get out of here, bro. Because again, the Shelton kids didn't want them there. There was a communication to leave. Again, all of these things could have been prevented. This is Jimmy McGrath just before he gets stabbed at the end of the fight. He's not engaging the defendant, but he would have you believe that he or somebody else was so that he can cloak himself with self-defense or defense of third parties. He had a duty to retreat and not even go after Jimmy McGrath. He was unarmed and he did nothing wrong. And even if you believe from the evidence that Jimmy was involved somewhere in the fight, somewhere, which there's been no evidence of that, but even if that's what you can infer from the video, I would submit to you that self-defense is not retaliatory. It's defensive. You can't come back and stab somebody just because you're mad. And that's exactly what happened here. He came back from the car. He ran back at people who were already, the fight was already done. Tyler De Silva clearly in the road. The fight was over. Kids were screaming back and forth. Tyler De Silva even said the fight was over at that point. You hear, get out of here, bro. And at the very end of the video, you see Jimmy McGrath step back like this to try to avoid the fight, the stab wound, the deliberate stab wound in his chest. He didn't stab him in the foot. He didn't stab him in the lower leg. He stabbed him right in the chest. What was his intent when he did that? When that happens, you hear Jimmy McGrath yell, I've been stabbed, and he collapses. He collapses. Yes. So he unnecessarily stabs Jimmy, right? You're going to hear an instruction about intent, right? And I'm sure the defense attorney's going to get up here and argue, he didn't wake up that morning, want to kill anybody or stab anybody. It's not what intent's about. Intent can be formed and can be formed within a moment. I would submit to you at the beginning of that fight that was not on video, as soon as he got hit, he informed the intent, the specific intent to stab people and cause serious physical injury, right? He went back to the car and he informed the same intent when he turned around and saw Jimmy. I'm going to stab this kid and get out of here. Why else would you stab him in the heart? You stab him right in the chest, piercing his heart. After he gets back to the car, he tells you that, or Snyder indicates, gets back in the car and he says, I just stabbed like 4 kids. So he knew how many kids he stabbed. He knew how many kids he stabbed, but he knew he stabbed kids. He got to understand here. I don't know if I stabbed them, right? We heard that testimony. I don't know if I stabbed. I was the only one with the knife, but Couldn't even say it, but he said it that night. He knew he stabbed kids that night. So we know he did it. They go back down the road. No, before we get there, they take off. De Silva jumps in the car. They take off. They take a left. They go down Adams Drive. They're at the cul-de-sac. He says, "Stop the car," and throws the knife into the woods. Why? Consciousness of guilt. There's instruction about consciousness of guilt. Why are we getting rid of the weapon, right? Gets back in the car. Go, go, go. They go back down to 36 Laurel Glen. Mackenzie's sister's there. He tells Jack and Tyler, "I'm going home with Mackenzie." Jumps in the car with Mackenzie, and the cars leave the area. Mackenzie drops off Keenan and Dimitri, and then they subsequently drop off the defendant at his house. Mackenzie was mad, right? She told you, I was pissed. I didn't want to be there. I was mad at him. They were going there to fight. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be involved in any of that. They were all going there to fight that. But after the defendant gets dropped off, you hear about the text messages that go back and forth between Mackenzie, who was his then girlfriend, and Raul. And he's saying things like, "I can't text anything. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Nothing is happening. Don't text me. I'm going to Florida. I didn't do anything." That was text messaging. They want to put anything in writing. You also hear that he spoke to Tyler De Silva on the phone. When he spoke to Tyler De Silva on the phone, he says, "Dude, I fucked up. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do." Because he knew what he was doing that night, and now he's having buyer's remorse. So again, what was his intent, right? You guys are really going to be able to examine what his intent was. And the judge is going to give you an instruction such as, there's no particular length of time necessary for the defendant to have formed the intent. Intent can be formed in an instant. It can be created in a moment. Intent may be, and usually is, inferred from the circumstances of the crime, since no witness can come into court and testify that they looked into a defendant's mind and saw what his intention was. You can look at the number of wounds inflicted, the location of those wounds on each person's body, the type of instrument used to cause those wounds, and his conduct during all of this. I would submit you could even look at the conduct from Lazybrook. What was his conduct during that fight, and then for what his intent was later on that night. In this case, the state contends that there were 9 stab wounds inflicted by this defendant on 4 different individuals. They were stab wounds, not slashes. I would suggest to you that a person who stabs multiple people multiple times in areas of the body that would cause serious physical injury and death intended to cause those serious physical injuries and death. There's no other rational conclusion. So that's what this case is about. The defendant was enraged about what had happened earlier. He armed himself and he returned to a house to face those kids with the intent to stab somebody. He could have waited down the street. He could have called the cops. He didn't have to go back. He did. He intentionally went back. It doesn't make sense when someone says, "I was very scared, frightened, and panicked," to go put yourself back in that situation. It makes 0 sense. And because of his conduct, 3 people are going to have to live with scars for the rest of their lives, both mentally and physically. And James McGrath lost his life unnecessarily, and the ripple effects that's caused his family. The credible evidence in this case shows that on that day, he intentionally caused physical injury to Faison Teal. He caused that injury by stabbing him in the upper arm with a dangerous instrument. With regards to Tommy Connery, the credible evidence shows that he intentionally caused serious physical injury to Tommy Connery. He specifically intended to cause that injury by stabbing him 4 times in the upper leg, causing deep stab wounds. You heard testimony from his doctor. She was concerned about compartment syndrome and him losing his leg. Deep stab wounds. I mean, deep stab wounds. These are not flailing slash marks. These are deep stab wounds. Again, the manner in which the wounds are inflicted, it's not corroborative of slash marks. And he did that with a dangerous instrument. With regards to Ryan Hines, he intentionally caused serious physical injury to Ryan Hines. He had the specific intent to cause that injury by stabbing him 3 times in the upper torso, causing a collapsed lung and other injuries to his lower abdomen and hip area. And he did that again with the dangerous instrument. And with regards to Jimmy McGrath, he formed the specific intent to kill Jimmy McGrath at the moment he came back from that car, turned to him, and plunged the knife into his heart. He didn't slash at Jimmy McGrath. He plunged the knife into his heart, through his rib cage and through his heart, and the poor kid bled to death right there on the front lawn. The judge is going to give you an instruction on sympathy. You need to follow that instruction. And I apologize for getting a little choked up here, because I have a son as well, and I can't imagine what it feels like to have that happen. And I hope no one else has to go through this ever. It's terrible. I apologize for taking a moment. But again, the judge is going to give you an instruction on sympathy, so please follow that on sympathy. But we are confident that after you review all of this evidence, you will find the state has proved each and every element of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. You'll find that the defendant intentionally caused the death of Jimmy McGrath, intentionally caused assault in the first degree to both Ryan Hines and Tommy Connery, and intentionally caused physical injury to Faison Teal with a dangerous instrument. We're confident after you review all the evidence, you'll determine this was not self-defense. He provoked this fight. He was the initial aggressor, and he had a duty to retreat, and he should have. The state urges you at this time, well, after you deliberate the evidence, we urge you that you find the defendant guilty of all the crimes charged and the information. Defense will now have an opportunity to speak with you. And when he's finished, I'll come back and speak with you again. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Y'all are probably tired of seeing me come up here and set up with all my stuff, so I'll just get right into it. This might be a hard case because it involves young people. It might be difficult because it involves young people, right? But it is not a complicated case. It is a case about the most basic right that any of us have, which is the right to defend ourselves when we're faced with people that are intent on doing us serious physical harm. It could be as much as death, serious disfigurement, and all the other things you're going to hear about that. You've heard from the state here telling you, I guess, that Lido Valley is a criminal mastermind who came over there with the plan to be able to use all of this so that now I can claim self-defense. You heard Mr. Valley get on the stand. Mr. Valley, a criminal mastermind, can put together a plan like that? And back home, we'd say, son, bless your heart, but that was mighty stupid. There was a whole lot of stupid to go around that night. There was a fire that got lit earlier in the night, and it started with all that drinking that was going on. And nobody there to say, what are we doing? How do we come into all of this? That's the first fire that was lit. And there were a lot more along the way. But again, not a complicated case. Mr. Valley took the stand. He talked to you. He didn't have to do that. Mr. Valley used a 3-inch pocket knife that Jack Snyder gave him, that Jack Snyder brought, that Mr. Valley didn't even know existed prior to that night. Mr. Valley didn't even know existed prior to Mr. Snyder giving it to him. Where was Lido Valley seated when Jack Snyder pulled that knife out and had it on his lap? Was he in the front passenger seat? No, that was Tyler DaSilva. Lido Valley is behind him with Mackenzie Trafficante on his lap. There's no way he can see that knife in Jack Snyder's lap. And Jack Snyder's the one who told you he took that out and put it in his own lap because he was so scared about what was going on. So Lido Valley can't see that knife, doesn't know it exists. Mr. Snyder told you there was no way that Mr. Valley could have known it was there before. He'd never brought it out. He'd never said to him, hey, I got this knife. Let's go riding over to 43 LGD and get a little payback. None of that happened. So it doesn't make any sense when Jack Snyder tells you that Lido Valley asked him for a knife that he didn't even know existed. Now I get it. Maybe some of you want to believe Jack Snyder and Tyler DaSilva. Maybe you say to yourself, gosh, those kids, nice looking kids, they get up here on the stand. Why shouldn't I believe them? Well, ask yourself, why should you believe them over Mr. Valley? Is there something about Mr. Valley and the way he came up here and took the stand and testified that tells you you should disbelieve him but believe those two? I didn't hear the state talk at all about exhibits 94 and 96 when they were up here. Did you? What are exhibits 94 and 96? I bet you remember. I hope it weighed heavily on your mind. Imagine if I came up here and asked you to believe witnesses. I can't even call them paid witnesses. They have something more valuable than any money they could ever be given. What is more valuable than a complete immunity agreement? Anything? Is there anything that a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid would not come up here and do or say in order to avoid any penalty whatsoever for their actions? Does that bother you? Does that disturb you? It should. Does that sound like justice for all? Does that sound like justice for some? Does that sound like equal justice to you? Going to give those two kids immunity agreements. Jack Snyder drove the car over there, gives the knife over to my client. Tyler DaSilva gets in that same car, rides over there to 43 Laurel Glen Drive, says he's going to go make peace. Listen, there was a lot of stupid going around that night. Tyler DaSilva got up here on the stand and told you, well, I thought I could go up and talk to them because I didn't have a problem with them. Maybe he did. Maybe some of you sitting here look at these kids and think of your own kids. State's attorney did. I know I did. Would any of you put your faith in something as important as this in a 16 or 17-year-old? Would you have reason to doubt that maybe they would fail to go to the grocery store and get everything that you had for them on a list? But we're going to sit here and expect these folks to give us the evidence that we need in order to convict somebody of murder who's charged with the same things that these folks could and should be charged with. They told you that. They know what they're exposed to. I went over it with them. I asked them about it. They know exactly what they're doing when they're coming in here. Jack Snyder's story doesn't make any sense. He gave him the knife because he asked for the knife that he didn't know existed. It's not just implausible. It's not just improbable. It is impossible. You don't ask for something that you don't know exists. He didn't know it existed before that moment. So we watched the ring video. The ring video is the 36 Laurel Glen Drive. That's exhibit 44. You'll have that available to you. You see the car stop. You see Mackenzie get out. She's walking up ahead. Raul's already on the curb, a little ashamed, in a bad situation here. Mackenzie's obviously upset with him. She's walking down towards the curb. Tyler DeSilva gets out of the front. And then the car stops, and it's there for some time before it drives off. Mr. Valley told you that's when Jack Snyder threw him the knife and said, just in case. Just in case what? Just in case this situation that I caused over here at 43 Laurel Glen Drive comes running down the street at you, throwing things and hollering things, and I'm about to drive off and leave you? Does that make more sense than he was pissed off? He was the most pissed off. He was angrier than anybody else there. And he asked me for that knife that he didn't know existed. Jack Snyder has every incentive in the world to make these folks and you promises that he just can't deliver on. He's got there is no more powerful incentive in the whole world than what he's got. What are the terms of that agreement that he was given? He's got to come in here and testify truthfully. But who makes that determination? Who's he working for when he's under that immunity agreement? Not me, not you, the state. And what did they all tell you almost without fail about what they did before they came in here? They met with the state's attorney a number of times. To do what? To get ready, to make sure that when they took that stand, they were going to testify truthfully. And I put air quotes around that because what does truthfully mean in this instance? To those guys, as they told you, it meant not deviating from the things that they had said, the things that they waited 7 months and after they'd gotten an immunity agreement before they were going to say anything. Now, when we were in here during jury selection, some of you said, well, there can be a lot of gray. There's more than two sides to every story. That was a bit of truth. How many sides to a story did we get here? And some of you said, well, a lot of people will lie. And you said that maybe you had a little bit of an idea about what happened here. You've got way more of an idea now about what happened here. And some of you said, well, I don't expect everyone to testify truthfully. People may want to defend or protect their families. You need more than just common sense to determine credibility. Some of you said you had an experience with a kangaroo court. You know what that's like. Don't turn this into a kangaroo court by putting any more weight into the testimony of Tyler DeSilva and Jack Snyder than what it deserves. And it doesn't deserve any more weight than the paper and the ink on which it is written, because that incentive is overwhelming. That's more than just defending your friends or your family. That's defending yourself. And some of you said, if we don't follow the law, our system wouldn't work. It's not here just for one person. It's not here just for a few people. It's here for all of us. And that's right. You all take seats that were laid out for you hundreds of years ago. You come in and you take those seats. You got to put your sympathy aside. Sympathy for the victim, sympathy for the complainant, sympathy for anybody. It's got no place here. Some of you have experience taking things through a process, doing quality control and making sure everything has been met along. Use that experience here. Does this make sense? Would this pass through quality control? I told you before, some of these witnesses, if not all of them, are promising more than they can deliver. Imagine if somebody tells you something that just can't be true. Somebody tells you they got to make a delivery and it's going to take them an hour and a half to get from here in the middle of the day through the city down to DC in 3.5 hours. They're making you a promise because they want you to believe them. They know you'd be really happy if they could actually make that trip, but they can't deliver on that. That's more than what they could possibly do. That's what these witnesses are doing for you. They're telling you things that they can see that couldn't have been seen. Why are they doing that? They want to avoid consequences that Mr. Valley is now saddled with. They want to protect themselves. They want to protect their friends, and they want to protect the memory of a loved one that they lost. Now, during jury selection, I asked you all if you could be open to the idea of self-defense. And to a person, you told me that you could. Some of you said you'd had to use some self-defense before. And you said you'd be open to it and you could understand that the law allows you to use self-defense. Defend yourself, defend loved ones. Whether or not you had experience with doing that, you said you'd be open to it. I don't know what you thought you were going to hear or what you thought self-defense looked like. Some of you had experience with it, some of you don't. But this is what self-defense looks like. It's messy. It's chaotic. It transpires quickly. And you don't have to make the best decision. That's not what the law requires. That's not. It's a higher bar. than anybody could be expected to make. It requires that you make a reasonable decision, that you make a decision that you had a reason for. You watch those videos, you know there's a reason for the defense that he used. He's down on the ground. He's getting kicked, stomped, punched, and he's being given no reason to believe that that's going to stop unless he makes it stop. Nobody's saying, that's enough, guys. Everybody up. Just a few licks and then we'll let him go. That didn't happen. What did happen? People joined in the fray. There were at least 15 to 20 people out there at a minimum. And you know that because if you watch that video, you can count Michael Sampieri, Sal Perry, Jacob Villalobos, Matthew Lockovich, Ryan Hines, Ty Wood, Tanner Chernowski, Tommy Connery, Charlie Connery. The list goes on. We heard about all of them. We see some of them. Alex Burnson. Some of them couldn't be identified. Those are at least the people that we can see. And Mr. Valley's down on the ground, getting kicked, punched, can't tell what's going on around him. Ryan Hines is on top of it, and Ryan Hines is punching him in the face. And Ryan Hines tells you, I didn't think he was aiming for me necessarily, because he wasn't. He reaches in his pocket and he takes out the only thing that he's got there, the only thing at that point that he thinks is going to make them stop, because they've not given him any reason to believe that they're going to do so on their own. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, but he said he brought a knife to a fist fight. No, he didn't bring that knife to that fist fight. He had that knife in his pocket because Jack Snyder took it out and threw it to him. And he's got some kids running down the way. Jack picks it up, sticks it in his pocket. Now, you heard the state argue to you, well, they submit that that's when he gave it to him now, is when we see it on that Ring video. Agreeing, I guess, with what Mr. Valley tells us, which is in fact, as you will recall, entirely different than what Mr. Snyder says, than what Keenan Frasick says. Snyder tells you he doesn't give him the knife until it's asked for, which again is completely ridiculous and unbelievable. But he tells you that happens after they're looking at the car, after he's dropped them off, driven down the street, leaving them there, comes back, and then everybody else who was still in the car gets out. Do you remember that? That was Jack Snyder's testimony. He didn't tell you that he threw it to him while they were right there. And Keenan Frasick, what does he describe? A mad scramble through the console, through the glove compartment. Where's that knife? Give me the fucking knife. Didn't happen. It's just unbelievable. It's not what Jack Snyder or anybody else describes. But Jack Snyder and Tyler DaSilva and all these other kids that are in that car, all these kids that had once been his friends, all these kids who haven't talked to him ever since that night, though they still remain very close with one another. Those kids all told you that Mr. Valley was the most upset of anyone there. More upset than Jack Snyder about his car. More upset than Tyler DaSilva, who was worried about the damages and how much it was going to cost. He was the most upset of anybody there. And he went into a rage. He was so angry. I've never seen anybody that angry in my life. He goes digging through the car and this and that and the other. Why? Does that make any sense? Of course not. Not unless you start to think about what's motivating them to ostracize and distance themselves from Mr. Valley, to aggrandize what he was doing so they can demonize him, so they can wipe their hands at Mr. Valley. I had no idea. I don't know. He was so mad. He was so angry. I just thought we were just going to go get back in the car and I was going to go make peace. It doesn't make any sense. Mr. Valley told you he and Tyler DaSilva were best friends. Again, it might have been mighty stupid to get back in that car, but there was so much stupid running around that night. And now Mr. Valley's the only one sitting here facing anything. Because he got in that car and had a pocket knife in his pocket. You'll recall not a single witness telling you that he got out of that car and came onto that lawn with that knife displayed. None of them saw it. He didn't get out dancing around with it, licking the blade, asking who wants a piece of this. None of that. He's not a person who carries a knife. It wasn't his knife. And mind you, one of the charges that you don't hear here is criminal trespassing. It was stupid to go on that lawn. I would agree with you. We could argue about that, and I would concede that. But it wasn't criminal under those circumstances. Those kids, for whatever their reasons were, had invited them there and wanted them on that lawn. What do they tell you? Did we hear a series of witnesses come in here and tell us all the things that they could remember so clearly? And they all could remember, I looked in the car. I might have been a long way away, but I could see Mr. Valley, and I could see Tyler DaSilva, and I could see Mackenzie Trafficking, and I could see Jack Snyder. But then when it came time to tell us, well, who else was there with you? Who else went out into the front yard with you? I can't really recall. Really? But you told us that all those folks were your friends. lifelong friends, grew up with them from childhood, been over to their homes, so comfortable that when they got to the house, they could walk right up and go in through the Bilko doors, that they could go downstairs. Nobody would even blink an eye, right? And when they got down there, they could see their friends. They knew who was there. But then when they all went outside, do you remember this? It was everyone got up. All of us went together. Oh, really? Who were you beside? Oh, I can't recall that, actually, now that you mention it. Oh, okay. Well, who was at the car? Some of them told you, there was a couple of us at the car, right? Maybe 3 or 4 of us at the car. Then others told you, no, there was maybe 10 of us that went to the car. And there were others that told you, well, there was more like 15 or 20 of us, and we were all around the car. Some of them told you, I didn't see anybody touch the car. I didn't see anything going on over there. It was peaceful, what I saw. And yet others told you, no, we had our hands on the car. We were rocking it. There was somebody bouncing up and down on the rear bumper. Who? I can't recall. Oh, okay. But you just went through a whole list of folks that you could tell us were there, that you saw downstairs, and you all went out together. So surely you must have seen Tyler Rich by the car. I don't recall. Oh, okay. What about Ty Wood? Where was he? I don't recall. You will have the opportunity to see all the evidence here as long as you want, as many times as you wish. Do a test. Do an experiment. Go through those witnesses. See when they can't remember things and ask yourselves if that's convenient, if it seems like they're protecting their friends. Or ask yourselves, is there something wrong with their memories? Why is it so selective? Why can they remember some things but not others? And do those things seem designed to protect their friends and themselves? Right? Tyler Rich has got to tell you that he told Tyler De Silva to get the fuck out of here when he sees him on his lawn. Because what he can't come in here and tell you is he didn't tell him get the fuck out of here. He wanted him on that lawn, and he wanted for his friends and him to be able to jump them and get some payback. Because if he tells you that, and if he tells the cops that, then he and his friends could get charged. Maybe they get an immunity agreement. Who knows? But they certainly have to admit to some conduct that is criminal. And they're not gonna do that. They didn't do it that night to the extent that they came in here and told you things that were different from what they told the cops before. I tried to point that out. I asked every single one of you during jury selection, probably looking at me like, what in the world is this all about? I gave you the parking lot example. Everybody remember the parking lot example, right? I said, what would you be interested in knowing? And if you came out and you saw 2 strangers that you've never met before, and they're each pointing at each other and saying, he did it. You look at your white car. Remember the white car? It's got a long red gash. Remember the red gash? I said, would you be interested in knowing whether either of them drove a red car? You guys looked at me, you're kind of like, I guess. I said, okay. Would you be interested in knowing whether or not there was any objective, other evidence that you could look at, like surveillance camera footage? He said, yes, that would be interesting to me. And I said, okay. Would you be interested in whether or not there were any eyewitnesses or people who claimed to be eyewitnesses? And you all said, yes, I think I would be interested in that. And I said, would you be further interested in knowing where those people were standing and whether or not it was possible for them to have seen what they claimed to have seen? And you all said, yes. And then I finalized that and I said, would you be interested in seeing how all of that evidence either aligns or doesn't? And you all said, yes. I know you did because I wouldn't have chosen you otherwise. That's your job, to look at that evidence. It's my job, based on what you told me, to try and show you those things about the evidence that gives you some doubt about what you're being told. You're being asked to align yourself with Tyler De Silva and Jack Snyder. You're being asked to condone that testimony and accept that and say, I don't have a reasonable doubt about what those 2 fellas told me. Again, would you trust those 2 fellas knowing that had that kind of incentive under any other circumstances where you had a decision as serious as this to make? If they were the 2 guys, the paid spokespeople that were telling you about a surgery that you should get, would you want to know what sort of value they were being given to tell you that that was what you needed to do? Of course you would. Would you make a serious decision and not have a reasonable doubt about it on the basis of those 2 folks? Would you trust that kind of evidence under those circumstances? Of course you wouldn't. Don't start doing it now. Why would you? You'll never forgive yourself if you do that. Don't overlook your reasonable doubts. This system is built on reasonable doubt. It's fundamental because none of us were there. We're looking at it after the fact. We're trying to determine, has the state proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt? You may feel inclined to try and solve the crime or somehow make things right. That's not your job. You can't fix all the ills that led up to that night. Your job is to determine whether or not you have a reasonable doubt about what happened that evening based on the evidence that you've been presented. And I think you've got more than a single reasonable doubt. You've got reasons to doubt Jackson. You've got reasons to doubt Tyler DeSilva, and you should heed those doubts. That's what the law tells you to do. Listen to your doubt. Give your doubt credence. It is, in fact, what binds us because it's there for all of us. And if you don't follow that doubt and give it the credence that it deserves, you're not following the law. And you're leaving these seats in a lower place than they were there when you took them. Just as fundamental to our system is the presumption of innocence. And again, I know I asked every single one of you whether or not you could uphold that. Whether or not you could tell me as you sat there, look at Mr. Valley, that you could presume him to be innocent, despite the fact that he had been charged with these things. And again, we made it kind of easy for you. This is not a case of a whodunit. This is not a case where we're claiming somebody else, who knows? No, this is not a case about who did what, with the exception, perhaps, I guess, of Faison Teal, as I think about it. There's no evidence really to show you that what happened to Faison, cut on his arm there, was as a result of a stab any more than Faison coming in and getting in a couple stomps, somebody pushing him from behind, and him getting a cut there. There really isn't. But it's not about who had the knife. It's about why and whether or not that was reasonable. Did he have a reason to do that? Or was he just out there to kill somebody? The state gets a lot of things wrong about this case, but it got one thing absolutely right. This is a specific intent case, but it's not specific intent to murder. You know that. You sat here through all of this. There was no specific intent to go out and murder. In order to believe that there was specific intent to murder Jimmy McGrath, you would have to believe that Mr. Valley was some sort of trained knife fighter who knew that by taking a 3-inch pocket knife and inserting it between the 6th and 7th intercostal, that he could strike directly into Mr. McGrath's heart. Now, again, he's no criminal mastermind, and he's certainly no trained knife. What he was a 16-year-old boy down on the ground getting stomped and kicked. And the numbers were overwhelming. Was it 15? Was it 20? Were they all focusing their attention on him at one point? Were they all focusing their attention on Tyler DeSilva? In that chaos, that's not a determination he could or had to make. None of us likes violence. We're not up here saying violence is okay. That's not part of the argument. But what we're saying and what the law says is that when you have a reason to believe that you need to defend yourself, that you have a right to do that and to use the force necessary. And that's what he did. And how do you know that that's what he did? Well, I guess if the state's now conceding that he got that knife during that exchange down on 36 Laurel Glen Drive, when we see those folks coming up, then the state should also have to concede the following. He had that knife in his pocket, and he didn't take it out when those folks came up. And he didn't take it out when he got sprayed in the face with WD-40 or PB Blaster. Forgive me, I have no idea what PB Blaster is, but I understand it's something that you could spray out from an aerosol can. And he didn't use it then either, despite having it right in his pocket. That's a lot of control for a person that they want you to believe is basically a homicidal maniac. He can't be both. Now, when he's down on the ground, you may recall Ryan Hines telling you, again, I didn't feel like he was aiming. What else did he tell you about his position? Do you remember? You could see his arm doing this thing, but it looked like his other arm and his bicep somehow stuck under him or pinned beneath him. Sure, because he told you he was in the fetal position down on the ground before he was able to get that knife out and start using it. And he had not just Ryan Hines on him, but all those other boys. You can see it in the video. You've got a couple different versions of that video, and I gave you Exhibit B, and I'd ask you to use it, a frame by frame that you can go through fast, as slow, focus in on a single frame, and you can see that there are two groups that peel off, that there are two folks that are wearing very similar outfits, and those outfits look very much like the lighter bottoms, dark blue top, some graphic on the back that Jimmy McGrath and Tommy Connery admitted to having been wearing that night. And you can see in some of those frames, feet attached to those figures, kicking a figure down on the ground that is clearly not Tyler DeSilva because he's being subjected to a separate beating over to the left. And you heard about how there were two fights developed, and that one goes down over to the right, one's going on over to the left. And think about what he's facing at that moment when he's down on the ground, because that's what self-defense requires. Not us sitting here later in the cool hindsight of this room, the ability to say, this, look at that. No, it's at that moment when you're 16 years old and you're down on the ground and you're facing the entire Shelton High School football team that's pissed off and they already know about the fight at 5 Lazy Brook, right? You heard testimony. They got there and everybody was already asking them about it. One of the first persons that came up to ask Ryan Hines about it was Jimmy McGrath. Griffin Marcinzik told you, Jimmy McGrath's one of the toughest kids I knew. There was already a building fury in that basement. They didn't know about that. This bunch of idiots are in the car. They just got added to a group chat. People are talking shit to them, as they said. People that they claim they knew on social. Can we all agree that if you think you know somebody on social, you don't know that person? I think you guys have all gleaned what a Luddite I am by my inability to work this contraption over here. Knowing somebody on social, you just don't know anything about that person. These were all strangers, at least to my client. Now, you know they're not all strangers to Tyler DaSilva. He told you about growing up with some of them. He told you about they knew cousins and things of this nature. And here they are, texting in the group chat, talking shit. And he says he thought it would be funny to tell them to come over to Trumbull High School because they were going to leave Trumbull High School. And if they showed up, they'd be gone. And then he told you, I saw a picture that got sent on the group chat and I realized, oh man, I know some of these kids. And he left. He left the group chat. There's Tyler DaSilva, Jack Snyder in the front seat. They're still going back and forth. They're still going at it. Jack Snyder, Griffin Marcinzik are really going at it, right? Griffin Marcinzik is taking photos of the car out front saying sitting ducks. That's what he was facing when he's down on the ground. Not you and I coming up around him and saying, what's going on here, my friend? Perhaps you should not be here right now. This appears to be a bad idea. No, that's not what that video shows. And let's talk about the existence of that video. These kids were ready. They came out with their phones going. This was gonna be a trophy, just like a hunter hanging a head up on the wall. Let's document this. Let's record this. Not, oh gosh, we don't want this to be going on. This scene's a little too violent. Gentlemen, let the young man up. No, we're filming this thing and we're celebrating. You remember Tanner Chanowski up on that stand? When I asked him, can you identify whose voice that is saying, yes, sir? That was me. That was you? And you're saying, yes, sir. Is that celebratory? I don't know what you mean. Celebratory. I don't know. I don't know why I said it. Oh, I asked, did somebody ask you a question to which the answer was yes, sir? Is that what happened? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so either. And again, how many times did these guys tell you something here that they admitted they hadn't told anyone before? And how often were they telling you, we were all doing something? Everybody just went. I couldn't see this and that and the other. But then on cross-examination, they would tell you, oh, well, yeah, everyone was throwing something, but actually that was me that was throwing something. Everyone was screaming stuff, but actually that was me that was doing it. They wanted to minimize their involvement, generalize what they were doing, anonymize it, and scrub it clean so that they could come in here and tell you, we were just shocked to find this going on. You know that's not true. If you want to believe that, ask yourselves, why? Why do you want to believe that? Sympathy? Do you have any reason not to doubt that when they tell you that? These are people that are filming a beating, not just one. Ricky Fiola's filming too, right? We just don't have that film. Ricky Fiola is over there. He's got the camera out. He's doing this. You can see him in some of these frames that they show you, right? It's like this. And you can almost kind of see when he turns over and he looks at the camera and the light shines right in his eyes. Ooh, you get that little red. And he's kind of like, oh shit, right? Oh, I didn't realize somebody else would be filming me filming. Then he goes, and what does he do with that? He goes and gives it right to the cops, right? Oh, he takes it and he shows it to some girls that were watching the thing go on. He wants to show them Tyler DaSilva getting beat because he thought one of the girls would like seeing Tyler get, and kind of drifted off. And I asked him, can you finish that for us? And he couldn't remember what it was that he wanted to show him. There's no reason to believe that those folks were going to stop unless they were made to stop. And if you tell yourself that there's a reason to believe that they were going to stop unless they were made to stop, if somebody back in that jury room tells you, no, he didn't have to do that. They were just going to stop and then let him up. Well, what's the reason to believe that? I'm asking, what's the reason to believe that? What's the psychology of a mob? What's the psychology of 18 to 20 boys and men? Don't forget, this is a boy at that time. Some of those folks there were men. They had already graduated. They told you. Taylor Capella told us. It was mostly older kids there that night. What is the psychology of a mob? The problem with the mob is not what they do as much as what they might do. Because you don't know what they might do. So when you're down on the ground, you're getting kicked, and punched and stomped. And again, we know there's at least 15 to 20 people there. It doesn't matter what these witnesses got up here and told us on the stand as far as saying, no, it was just a one-on-one, or maybe it was two of them talking with them. That's just simply unbelievable based on what we see there and what's going on that video. And we heard a little bit from some of the witnesses trying to tell us Raul's there on the lawn beside Tyler DeSilva. They're facing this big group of Shelton High football players that have started to circle them. He's not got the knife out, but he's going to pull back like he's cocked and ready to punch somebody. And who was that supposed to be? Ty Woods? You didn't hear Ty Woods tell you that, did you? No, you didn't hear a thing from Ty Woods. You heard the people that are trying to protect themselves from what they did tell you that that's why Tyler Rich just had to haul off, even though he was over here talking to Tyler DeSilva, and punch Mr. Valley, who again still had not pulled out a knife, even though he's got it in his pocket. Didn't even pull it out to say, hey, whoa, guys, this is looking a little dangerous here. I think maybe you should all know, back off. No, at that point, Tyler DeSilva's still thinking he's going to make peace because he knows somebody's cousin. They know his cousins. Ricky Fiola and Tanner Chernowski are proof that everybody there knew what they were planning to do because they had their cameras ready to go. So those are the kind of folks that are kicking and stomping and punching Tyler DeSilva and Mr. Valley while they're down. And the first three folks that get stabbed, look at their wounds. Again, Faison Teal. He told you, well, I was sort of over on the side, and then I came in and I started getting in a few, what did he call them? Light stomps? Medium stomps? You ever been medium stomped? Anybody? What's a medium stomp? A stomp is a stomp. A stomp is somebody down on the ground. You don't stomp somebody who's standing up, do you? No more than you stab somebody in the legs unless you're down on the ground. Look at those wounds. One to the back of the leg, a couple to the front. Those are wounds that you give somebody when you're down on the ground. You don't bend down and give a couple here and a little there and let me get one in the back. It's just not how that happens. It happens because you're frightened and you're panicked and you're scared and you have a reason to believe that you've got to do that because nothing else is stopping them. In fact, you heard Mr. Valley, it scared him even more after he had to do that because it didn't stop. And you've got Ryan Hines. Look at his injuries. One to the ribs. What? When you're over top of him? When you're punching him in the face? Then further down on the side. And finally one down on the hip flank area. Again, what did he do? Mr. Valley was standing with him and went, one here, one here, one here, one there. It makes no sense. It's not the way this happened. It's not the way self-defense happens. Again, it's not complicated. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean it's not difficult. The decision that you have to make, but it is not complicated. It is simple. Down on the ground, he's getting stomped. The same thing is happening to his friend. Nothing is telling them that's going to end unless he makes them stop. So with his arm pinned behind him while he's getting stomped and kicked, boom, Ryan Hines. Tommy Connor, he tells you he comes over and separates them, right? And he takes his place. Over top of him, pounding him on him? No, he's over there as well, getting in his kicks. His leg gets stuck, gets the side, the back, right? Now, Ryan Hines tells you after he got stabbed, that was it. He had nothing to do with what happened to Tyler DeSilva. You know that's not true because you saw that video. You saw that green hoodie, black shorts with the white trim right over there on top of Tyler DeSilva, kicking him and stomping him with the rest of the group. Part of the state's argument here is simple. Who are you going to believe? Our witnesses or your lying eyes? Look at the video. Watch it, and you will see there are two groups here. You will see one group breaks off. That's the group that is beating on Mr. Valley, and then you can see them shove him into the road. He walks to the car. Thank goodness at that Tanner Chernowski was filmed, because what do we see? Camera pans over. He's looking. What's he looking at? He's looking at where Mr. Valley is. Mr. Valley's by the car. He opens the door briefly. You see the light come on inside, the interior light. And then you see his head go just like this, right? And we can see the side of his face. We see the profile. And you can almost hear the wheels clicking inside Ski's mind. It's like, what's he looking at? The camera pan again. What does that camera pan right to? Tyler DeSilva on the ground, surrounded, getting pounded on by a number of kids, right? Kids that are saying, yeah, come on, get some. Who wants a piece of this? Yes, sir. That's what's going on. Any indication those kids are going to just stop that at that point? No, not a single reason to believe that they're going to stop. They didn't stop with my client until he had used that knife. And they gave him no reason to think that they were gonna until he used that knife. That knife was a tool. It was the only tool that he had available to him to survive. That was the specific intent that he had. States charge specific intent crimes. Again, they're right about specific intent. but it's not specific intent to murder. It's not specific intent to assault. It's specific intent to survive because he had no reason to believe they were going to just let him, that was going to stop. They were intent on pummeling him into unconsciousness at best, serious physical harm, almost certainly, and no way to know whether or not that was going to stop until he was dead. Just not. If you want to believe otherwise, ask yourself why. You're going to get an instruction on implicit bias. Is there something about the way my client looks, the way I am, that makes you think he's any less believable than those kids? That he deserves to have self-defense available to him any less than any one of us? That those kids, if they were down in that same position, wouldn't have done that exact same thing? Would it change your mind if he'd had a screwdriver with a 3-inch shaft in his pocket and that he pulled that out and used it? He'd have the same wounds, stabs and punctures. This is what self-defense looks like. Most of us have never had to think about that before. What does self-defense look like? I don't know. Maybe I saw it in a movie or something. There's no manual for self-defense. When you're down on the ground, there's no handbook that you can pull out and be like, getting stomped by group of, how many of you are here? It doesn't work like that. The law doesn't require you to go through that, because if it did, you'd be dead. Maybe that's something that you've never thought about with the law. But I asked you guys, I know I did. You follow the law even if you don't like it. And I probably gave you some ridiculous example, like, have you ever heard the song, I Can't Drive 55? There's a guy who doesn't like the speed limit, and he says he can't follow it. Well, this is a lot more serious than that, right? This is, can you follow the law even if you don't like the fact that somebody died? But the law is, you just have to make a reasonable choice. Did he have a reason to do what he did? Yes. Do you have any reason to doubt that? What is it? Because Tyler Da Silva told you that the fight was over when he got back over there? You saw Tyler Da Silva in that video. He didn't think the fight was over. He's in the street, hitching up his pants, facing back towards the group. And we can't see Raul at that. Tanner's perspective is over here. You can see Jimmy McGrath a little bit on the side. And you heard Mr. Valley tell you, they were forming a semicircle. They were forming a horseshoe. And I asked all of those witnesses who watched that video, where did those kids go? Where was Charlie Connery coming from? Followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. Who were those kids that were following him? One of them was Matthew Lockridge. One of them was Jimmy McGrath. Where were they coming from? Watch that video. Use the frame by frame. Go through that part closely. You'll see exactly where they were coming from. They're coming from just having been involved with the fight with Lito that shoved him out into the grass, out into the street. That's exactly where they're coming from. Now, he didn't have time to identify anybody. He didn't know Jimmy McGrath. That's probably the tragedy, the most tragic thing of this whole thing. These kids are practically strangers, at least when it comes to Mr. Valley, as to all of them. With a stranger, you can't know what is that person going to do. You have to make your decisions based on the information that they're giving you at that moment. Again, what's the information that he's got? These are kids that are going to attack the car. These are kids that are going to stomp, kick, punch, gang up on, film it, record it. For what? I asked Tanner Chernowski, why are you recording this? Oh, I don't know. I just do that. And then at some point he admitted to collect memories. He thought this was going to be a memory that he wanted to keep before he knew what the tragic outcome was. But when he thought it was just a beating and an assault that was going to go on, yeah, that was a memory he wanted to collect. That's who he is. That's who these other kids were. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, when he comes back onto the grass and he passes by Tyler Da Silva, at that point, I can't see any of those other kids that are there. I just see Tyler, and then I see a little bit of Jimmy. Well, you see a little bit more than that. See that hand? Remember that hand down here around the back on Jimmy? It's not his hand. It's Matt Lokovich's hand, because they're side by side, because they are part of a semicircle. This is a group that has been acting as a group the entire time. You're telling me all of a sudden this group has decided, oh, let's split up, let's single out. No. And in fact, you can see in the video across the way, there's another person on the other side of Mr. Valley. He's got on a dark top, and there's some sort of white lettering across the top. You may remember I was trying to point that out. You're going to have that evidence. Take a look at it and ask yourself about perspective, right? Because when we're looking at things one way, we can see it like this, and these things appear to be very distant, far apart. But if I shift over here, now it looks like something else is in front. And ask yourself, wait a second. He steps into that place. These kids are all around him. They don't just disappear. And you say, okay, well, hold on. Charlie Connery's yelling, he's got a knife, he's got a knife. These kids are all backing up, right? Makes perfect sense, right? Thank you, Charlie. You solved that one for us. I think he did, inadvertently. Do you tell somebody who's running out of a house fire, 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 I got to warn you about the fire that you're running away from? No, you don't. You warn somebody about a danger that they are running into. And that's exactly what was happening here. He's got a knife. He's got a knife. Guys, don't go rush him. You need to back up. That's who you warn. You don't call off people that are already calling themselves off. Again, that just doesn't make sense. And you don't have to believe those witnesses just because it's their friend who died. You don't, and you shouldn't, and you wouldn't under any other circumstances. Some of you have experience doing workplace investigations. You know this is way more serious. These stakes are so high. Why are you going to believe these witnesses and this evidence under circumstances like this when you wouldn't believe these folks, knowing what you know about them, their selective memory, their efforts to minimize and generalize and anonymize, not put themselves or their friends in any danger, lay it all on him. Your duty is to look at this situation, circumstances that my client faced as they were at that time. It's at least 20 versus 2. It's at least that. Could have been more. Some of these folks told you, oh, well, there's people watching. They're just sitting. They're just watching. You want to believe that? There's probably nothing I can tell you or should even argue to you. These folks had sprayed WD-40 in his face. These folks, 20 versus 2. That's 40 fists, 40 feet and legs. There's nothing that says the force he uses to defend himself under those circumstances has got to be identical. Just because they have fists and feet doesn't mean he can only punch and kick back. That's not what self-defense requires. It simply requires reasonable. Is it reasonable to use a 3-inch pocket knife that you didn't bring, but that you have in your pocket because your friend gave it to you under those circumstances? Of course it is. Look at these wounds. Jimmy McGrath, 1 wound. That's it. He's not trying to stab him over and over and over. He steps into this situation. Look at the amount of time between the time he steps onto the grass. And again, perspective, they want to try and tell you that that kid on the far side of him is not lined up with Mr. Valley. Look at the grass underneath their feet. Valley's on the grass. That kid's on the grass too. The line of the curve goes just like this. You know about horizon and perspective? They're almost side by side, those two kids. The other kids haven't gone anywhere. It's wet. You remember me asking all these kids, is it dark, wet, rainy, misty? I don't remember. You can see it in the video. You can see rain beating on the windows of the cars. Of course it's wet. And you heard Taylor Capella tell us he came onto the grass and he slipped. He spun around. Mr. Valley told you he got punched. Somebody swung at him. Did you see Matt Lockovich's hand on Jimmy's back? And all of a sudden it's gone. You can infer what happened there. Matt Lockovich takes a swing at him and Mr. Valley told you, I just swung. I put everything I had into it. I was terrified. These kids hadn't stopped before when they were stomping me and I had to use that. They weren't stopping now. Did he have a safe retreat that he could completely and safely retreat? Of course not. Last time that he had tried to get up, these kids tackled him and went down again. And here they were coming again. And we know they were coming again because we hear them being warned. He's got a knife. He's got a knife. Again, you're not telling that to somebody who's not walking towards that danger you're trying to walk them on, who's not rushing towards that person once again. Mr. McGrath is holding the edge. These are all football players, right? They know what it means to hold. He's holding the edge, that horseshoe, that semicircle. He is a threat just as much as anybody else in that mob at that point. Those are the circumstances that Mr. Valley was facing. That's what you have to judge him on. And if you want to believe these kids, look, you've heard about consciousness of guilt, right? Why have we heard this evidence about consciousness of guilt? It doesn't change anything about what happened down there on the ground at that point. It's just another effort to make my client look like some sort of criminal mastermind. He knew to go out and throw the knife into the woods. Well, let's talk about that. Who told us that that's what happened? Only one person, Jack Snyder. When he's in here singing for his supper, the jailhouse keys ringing in his ear, he's trying to give you something, trying to give the state something to believe him. Oh, they haven't found a knife. I'll tell him he threw the knife down at the end of Adams in the cul-de-sac. And then Shelton PD, Durango tells you, oh, we went out, we looked for the knife, couldn't find it. No knife. I guess that means Jack Snyder must be true. I guess Jack Snyder must be telling us the truth now about this. Tyler Dilla didn't tell you anything about that. He's in the car, it stops, nearly hits his head on the back seat. He's screaming at Jack about something. 1 or 2 seconds later, Mr. Valley hops back. Mr. Valley told you, I got out of the car, I was feeling some pain, I looked at my ribs. He didn't tell you that he had the knife or that he did something with it. He told you he lost that knife, right? And he told you he lost that knife as he was running back, trips and falls. And what's he got on his hands? You've seen it. He's got 2 big, nasty strawberries on the heels, palms of his hands, exactly like somebody would have when they fell to the asphalt. Like it looks like road rash. And he lost the knife at that point. Do you have any more reason to believe Jack Snyder about anything, let alone that? Of course, ask yourself, if you want to believe him, why? Why do I want to believe Jack Snyder so badly? He's not giving you any reason to believe him. The text messages. Again, here's my client, criminal mastermind, conscious of guilt. So he's texting with his girlfriend, who's also, no, she's 17. He's 16, she's 17. They're texting back and forth like he's going to convince her that he wasn't there. That doesn't make any sense. He was panicked. He was still scared. He had no idea what had just happened. Look what he'd just been through. He's not going to convince her that I wasn't there. And then he goes to Florida. He's 16. He doesn't go to Florida because he's trying to get away from things and he knows that he can go down there and escape. I don't even know if you can get on a flight when you're only 16 years old. But he gets on that flight because that's what his parents told him to do. And that's what you do when you're 16. Your parents tell you we're going to Florida. It's not a mastermind move on his part. It's just trying to make him look bad. He doesn't need any help looking bad. Okay? Again, bless his heart, there was a whole lot of stupid going around that night. And that's my client that I'm talking about. Mr. Valley is no different than any of these other kids. If you're telling yourself for some reason that you think that he is, ask yourself why. Look at the situation all these kids were in that night. How did they get there? These kids at 43 Laurel Glen Drive were like torches. My client and his friends, they were like straw. Throw those torches in there, put them all together. There's absolutely no way to know what is going to happen as that wildfire starts to catch and goes round on the front lawn of Laurel Glen Drive. But he certainly knew as he was down on the ground that folks weren't stopping with the stomping. They weren't stopping with the kicking and the punching. So he used that, a tool to survive. If you're down in the bottom of a hole, dirt's being shoved on top of you, you're going to use a shovel to climb your way out. That's what he was doing. You have every reason to believe that.
A little bit of stuff, you wrap it up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Folks, I'm not going to apologize for taking up a little bit more time. I do want to thank you for listening. I hope you will look at that evidence. I hope you will take your time with it. I hope you will all understand this is probably the most important thing you've ever been asked to do in your lives. And I will tell you that the law requires you, despite the tragic ending in this case, the law requires you to find my client not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Yeah.
It's funny that listening to counsel's argument about there's a lot of Tyler DeSilva, Jack Snyder. This case does not rise and fall with Tyler DeSilva and Jack Snyder. The warrant was signed, you heard from Detective Bango, on Monday the 16th. So the warrant was signed. There was enough probable cause at that point. And then the investigation was still unfolding. But there was enough to arrest the defendant when he did that. Tyler DeSilva and Jack Snyder approached us 6 months later because they had information. And they want you to discredit everything Tyler DeSilva and Jack Snyder. But you have to look at it. Remember when we drank one beer, I asked all of you, how do you determine credibility? Are you just going to sit there and look and hear, listen to what they have to say? What's their demeanor? But isn't it, use your common sense? How does what one witness say, how does it marry up to other witnesses' testimony in the entire case? Tyler DeSilva and Jack Snyder are not the only people that heard the defendant ask for the knife. Keenan Frasick did. Demetrius Arfanis did. Mackenzie, they heard somebody asking for a knife while she's walking away. There are other people that heard these things. So again, whether or not you're ready to just discredit them because they have an immunity agreement with the state of Connecticut, I suggest to you, see how the information they provided to you in this case marries up with the rest of the case. And I would agree with the defense that there was a lot of stupidity that night. Absolutely. But the bottom line is you can't bring a knife to a fist fight. You just can't. Look at the defendant's injuries days after the incident. He's not completely beat up. It's because he took the knife out immediately and started stabbing people. You would think he would have huge contusions all over his head, and he didn't even go to the hospital. I would submit if he was that badly beat up and the only way out was I had to fight for my life. But the physical evidence does not show that. And there was testimony, his arms pinned under his body. How did he get the knife out with one hand and open it up with one hand? I would submit that's next to impossible unless you're a pro at it. I think the more likely thing that you can infer from what happened is that he took the knife out of his pocket while he was involved in the fight immediately, opened it up, and started stabbing people. He wasn't on the ground like they would have you believe. He went after Tommy Connor. He stabbed Brian Hines in the chest. It's just not reasonable to bring a knife to a fist fight. He went there looking for trouble. That's the bottom line. Because if he doesn't go back, none of this happens. But he went back. Imagine if he didn't go back with a knife, it would have just been a fist fight. That's all. But he went back with a weapon. You can't use more force than what's being used against you. And the defense would have you believe that being punched is deadly force. It's just simply not true. By the way, they want you to discredit everybody that has testified in this case. This is not a whodunit, and they agree it's not a whodunit, right? He used that defense attorney used that parking lot example. I was actually thinking about this during the break. The kids that testified, they saw what happened, right? It was chaotic, but they saw what happened. And when they go and they give a statement to the police, were they asked who was to the right of you, who was to the left of you? Probably not. Did they know at the time? Maybe. But now it's 3 years later, right? So it's kind of like a situation where you're in a parking lot and you park your car. Now, all of you came here and you parked your car. Did you look to the right? Did you notice what color the car was next to you? Maybe some of you did. Maybe some of you didn't. But you knew you parked next to a car, right? Now imagine that happening, and then you see somebody being chased in the parking lot and get stabbed with a knife, right? Now that's a horrific event that you've just witnessed, and you give a statement to the police, right? And you see, you're not going to say stuff like park next to the red car. Maybe you remember that at the time. So now fast forward 3 years later, I guarantee each and every one of you would recall that horrific event happening. But if you got on the stand and I said, well, what color was the car to the right of you? You can't recall. What car was the car to the left of you? I can't recall. Do you know if there were cars next to you? Yeah, I know there were cars next to me. I just don't recall what color. So the reality is the color of the car or the person that was standing next to anybody necessarily in and around that area in this fight, this chaotic scene, is that important in the grand scheme of things, right? Does it make a fact and evidence more or less probably not, right? Because listen, there were a lot of people around, a lot of people were watching. There was 2 or 3 kids fighting at any given time, right? We've seen that. We've seen video. But does it really make a difference if, Taylor Capella told us she was standing next to who? Michaela Holt, right? She remembered her. Maybe there was somebody else next to her she can't recall. Tommy Connery was standing in the driveway at any given time when the car first arrived. Yeah, I knew I was there. I was talking to people. I just can't remember exactly who I was talking to. But does that really matter in the grand scheme of things when we know the car arrived at 43 Laurel Glen? There was this confrontation. The car was shook. The car was hit, and they took off. And according to people inside the car, it was scary. We didn't want to be there. We wanted to get out of there. And the defendant told you that. Again, assess his credibility, because when he's down the street, he arms himself with a knife and comes back. If you're really that scared, why would you go back and confront 30 kids who just shook the car? That makes no sense to me. So, look, the defendant was angry. We don't know why he was angry. It's because of the car. We've heard testimony about that. It's because, these kids really messed up the car and he was pissed off, and it was almost like they won up. He had already had one up on Ryan Hines back on Lazy Brook because he tuned him up with the helmet after he sucker punched him from behind. But now that they disrespected Jack Snyder's car, let's go back. If things go sideways, guess what? I got a plan B. That was his plan. Might have been a stupid plan, but that's what happened. That's the bottom line. This is not something that happened, I would say instantaneously. As soon as he gets hit, he takes the knife out. He's not waiting to get pounded on. No, there's no way. If he was getting pounded on the way the defense suggests he was, he would have more injuries that we would have seen after the fact. And he simply did not. And by the way, the defendant testified when he was running out of there after he stabbed McGrath in the chest, he dropped the knife. The cops looked for the knife all in that area. They couldn't find the knife. They actually walked up and down the street. They held the area. They looked for the knife the next day. No knife. And the information that Jack Snyder and Tyler DeSick gave us, right? We didn't know where the knife came from. We knew the defendant had a knife. We didn't know how he had the knife or where it came from. Jack Snyder gave us that information. He came to us. We didn't go to him. But even if De Silva and Snyder out of it, it's still the defendant going back to 43 Laurel Glen with a knife. There were people in his car that he went to high school with that heard him ask for a knife. He went there. He got out of the car. He went in and provoked the fight and instigated the fight. And it started. He took it out and started stabbing kids because that's what he wanted to do. And then once he was able to get out of there, he went back in for more. And they have to have you believe that, he was being approached or surrounded when he came back into the fold. He has a duty to retreat. You can't come back into a fist fight with a knife. It's just not reasonable. It's not reasonable. Even if you believe that self-defense applies to the first 3 kids that are stabbed, even if you believe that, it certainly does not apply to Mr. McGrath. Because again, self-defense is not retaliatory. It's not punitive. It's defensive. You can't do things like this and then turn around and claim self-defense. He came back from the car. Charlie yelled, he's got a knife. And within seconds, he turned around and stabbed McGrath in the chest. They want to have you believe that he slipped. It was a purposeful stab in the chest, right? So again, when we're talking about intent, specific intent, the areas of where the wounds were inflicted, right? The number of wounds inflicted, the defendant's manner and how he conducted himself that night, both at Lazy Brook and later that night, he did not have to go back to that house. It's as simple as that. He did not have to go back. But if he was going back, he was going back with a plan B. That's as simple as it. And that conduct cannot be excused. It's a horrific event. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. That cannot happen. Because if that happens all the time, then this is a very different world we live in. And I asked him on a cross-examination, when you got out of there and you left and you went home, after you texted Mackenzie, you didn't call the cops at that point, did you? Nope. You went to Florida, right? Yep. Did you call the cops when you're in Florida? Nope. After you learned the severity of the situation, did you call the cops and tell them, hey, this is what happened. I was pummeled. I was acting in self-defense. Nope. So again, I would submit to you that, yeah, what he was doing. And as soon as he stabbed those kids, and he told Jack, and they got out of there, and they went down to Adams Drive and got rid of the knife. Why are we getting rid of the knife? Call the cops. This just happened. It's horrific, but this is what got rid of the knife, got rid of the evidence. Tells his girlfriend I wasn't there, didn't want to put anything in writing. Because if he said, yeah, you know what, I was really getting pummeled. I had to stab those kids to get out of there. I was really fighting for my life. Didn't say that in the text. Just said, no, I wasn't there. It wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't there. And then he told Tyler DeSilva subsequent to that he messed up. He knew. The judge is going to give you, the self-defense instruction. And again, it's only justified when a person reasonably believes that such force is necessary. Reasonably believes. The first thing he didn't do is he didn't punch back. He didn't kick, grab that knife. Again, you're going to hear the judge instruct that a person must not use more force than he reasonably believes is necessary. I would submit on that night, he used more force than was reasonably necessary. And the state submits that we've proven that beyond a reasonable doubt. We also submit that he provoked the fight. You're going to hear some disqualifiers. If you believe the state has proven the disqualifier, one or all of them, doesn't matter. If you believe we've proven those disqualifiers beyond a reasonable doubt, then he cannot avail himself of the self-defense claim. So under provocation, you're going to hear the judge instruct that a circumstance under which a person is not justified in using any degree of physical force in self-defense against another person is when he provokes the other person to use physical force against him. The defendant must have specifically intended to provoke another into using physical force and then use force to defend himself from the ensuing force that he provoked that person to use against him. You're also going to hear about the initial aggressor. The instruction with regards to that is another circumstance under which a person is not justified in using any degree of physical force in self-defense against another is when he is the initial aggressor in the encounter with the other person and does not both withdraw from the encounter and effectively communicate his intent to do so before using physical force. He also has a duty to retreat. You're going to be instructed that two conditions must be met. A complete safe retreat is available to him, and he knows he can avoid the necessity of using deadly physical force, by making a complete safe retreat. Self-defense cannot be retaliatory. It must be defensive. It's not punitive. It's again, if you look at if you look at everybody's testimony, they would need you to disbelieve everybody's testimony in this case for you to not find that the state is proven to be unreasonable doubt. If you looked at Jack Snyder and Tyler Silva, took them out of it and just listened to everybody else who testified, I would submit that there is more than enough evidence to determine that this defendant brought a knife to a house he shouldn't have been at, and he used that knife when he shouldn't. And after he used it, he went back in and he stabbed McGrath for no good reason. But I would submit that he formed the intent to kill him when he turned to him and lunged at him and stabbed him in the chest. You heard the testimony of the doctors, of the medical examiner. These were not slash wounds. These were puncture wounds, purposeful puncture wounds. The fight lasted about 30 seconds. You heard evidence of that, 17 of which it was video recorded. I know defense counsel wants to point out that McGrath was involved in some of it. Unclear. You're the judges of that. But even if he was, like I said before in my opening remarks, self-defense cannot be retaliatory. You can't come back and say, well, listen, man, you were pushing me into the road. Sorry, I'm going to stab you. You can't do that. I mean, what kind of world do we live in? Yeah, it's not right that there's fist fights. It happens. But I mean, look, Tyler DeSilva was getting beat up, but he wasn't getting completely demolished. I mean, at some point they threw him out in the street and they said, get out of here. It was over. And, and the Ryan Hines, Faison Teal, Tommy Connery, they came in and they told you what their part was in the whole situation, right? Tommy Connery, I would submit, there's no self-defense claim against him. He was trying to get in there and breaking things up, pushing him away. Why did he deserve to get stabbed? And I would submit Ryan Hines, Ryan Hines said, I hit him, punched him a couple times, but that's his fist. It's not a knife. If Ryan Hines had a weapon, it would be a different story. If Faison Teal had a weapon, this would be a different story. If Tommy Connery had a weapon, this would be a different story. And if Jimmy McGrath had a weapon, this would have been a different story. But the bottom line is you can't escalate the fight. And that's exactly what the defendant did. Counsel indicated on his closing argument that Tyler Rich wanted him on the lawn. That's simply not true. And we have evidence of that down at 36 Laurel Glen. They ran down there. They're arguing back and forth. Things are being thrown, but there's no physical altercation. Why would you? Now, let's wait and see if they come back. Let's fight on the lawn. I mean, just have the fight down the street. They didn't fight down the street. That's the whole point. They wanted them out of here. Again, the judge is going to instruct you on what specific intent is. No, there's no time, no particular time necessary, no length of time necessary to form the intent. I know that counsel, did he wake up in the morning? Yeah, I'm going to go kill somebody, stab some kids. Of course not. Of course not. But if that were the case, if we had to prove that somebody woke up in the morning saying, I'm going to go stab people or shoot people or kill people, then we would never be able to prosecute anybody, because that's a tough thing to prove. And that's the point, because it's the conduct at the time that it happens, right? That's how you can infer what he created the specific intent when he decided to take out that knife and escalate the fight and stab people. And you heard everybody testify. I think I asked every person that testified that, involved in the fight, did you have a weapon? What did you witness about the fight? Did you see anybody with weapons? Nobody had weapons there. It was a high school fight that escalated. And the interesting thing is, defense counsel didn't really spend much time on Taylor Capella and Charlie Connery. Those are the two individuals that actually saw the defendant stab McGrath, right? He turned to McGrath and lunged at him. Who was Charlie standing next to? Do you think Charlie wasn't, a lot of these kids, they were kids at the time. Their memories maybe have faded a bit. I don't recall exactly where, Ricky Fiola was at any particular time. I don't recall if I was in the basement, on top of the basement, outside the basement. But the story is the same. The horrific event that is etched in their minds forever is the same. They recall this defendant, who had no right to be there, come back to that house and stab 4 of their friends. This is not about protecting people. They got to understand, we were underage drinking. Yeah, there was a fight. People were punching people and it wasn't right. Sure. But who were they protecting? Who were they protecting? They just came in here and told their story from their perspective. And does it mean that because one person's perspective as to where they were standing or who they were standing with, and the other person doesn't remember them standing next to that person, does that mean that it's a lie, as the defense would have you believe? I would submit no. Because if you don't recall sitting next to each other a year from now, but you recall me arguing to you and the defense attorney arguing to you, that's all that matters, right? Because it's what you're perceiving here, not really in your periphery necessarily. I mean, you may remember it, but does that matter is the question. Does it matter who was standing next to you at any particular time? And the defense attorney wants you to ask yourself, does a lot of it make sense? And the thing that I would submit to you that doesn't make any sense at all is if you were truly, truly scared of the 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 kids that just rocked the car and threw stuff at the car, if you were panicked, why would you go back and want to confront them? At the end of the day, that makes zero sense. It makes zero sense unless you had some courage in you, and you had some courage in you because you had a weapon. That's the only reason that would make sense, because he went there. He had the intent to hurt somebody there, especially if the fight got physical. They want you to believe that the knife was the only tool that he could use to survive. I mean, he's not, in the Amazon. This is a high school fight, a fist fight that wouldn't have happened, by the way, if he didn't go back. The only kids seriously injured here were Ryan, Faison, Tommy, and Jimmy. He didn't get seriously injured. You can't bring a weapon to a fist fight. You just can't do it. And to excuse this conduct would be just wouldn't be right. Self-defense cannot be punitive. It has to be defensive. At the end of the day, that's what this case is about. And that's what they're hanging their hat on. They want you to find self-defense because they can't hide around the fact that the defendant brought a knife to this fight. That's in a nutshell. That's so you have a tough job. Absolutely. Because you have to look at every element of the charge. The state proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. Did we prove specific intent to cause serious physical injury with a weapon with regards to Hines and Tommy Connery? Did we prove the specific intent to cause physical injury with a weapon for Faison Teal? Did we prove that the defendant had the specific intent to kill Jimmy McGrath and cause his death? I submit to you that if you look at the conduct of the defendant, bringing that knife back, he could have left the knife in the car. He could have not taken the knife from Jack. Think about that. But he didn't do that. He brought the knife with him. If you look at that conduct and you're questioning, well, what was his intent? I mean, you have the Laserbrook fight too. Didn't need to helmet Hines, but he did. He helmeted the kid and then got up there and told you a different story. I think after you look at all the evidence in this case, cold, hard look at the facts, we're confident that you're going to find the defendant guilty of the murder of Jimmy McGrath, assault in the first degree for Ryan Hines, assault in the first degree for Tommy Connery, and assault in the second degree for Faison Teal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard all the evidence that you have heard closing arguments. However, you have not heard the defense instructions regarding the law that you